Welcome to Practice Disrupted, a podcast where we find ways to create new solutions to current challenges while elevating the value of architects. I'm your host, Evelyn Lee, an architect who spans tech as an angel investor, startup advisor, and founder of Practice of Architecture. Whether you're a seasoned architect or just starting in the field, this podcast is your gateway to think differently about the role architects play within our global community. Hello, Disruptors. Welcome back to this week's episode of Practice Disrupted. Today, we're joined by Duane McLemore and Katherine Voorhies, the creative minds behind Xover0, a jewelry brand known for its bold, innovative designs that merge architectural form with high fashion. Founded at their kitchen table in Los Angeles, Xover0 has grown into a premier casting studio in Mississippi, crafting heirloom-quality pieces that have captured the attention of customers around the world, including a spotlight in Netflix's The Uglies, where their Geoheart pendant worn by Joey King plays a primary role in the movie's story. Duane is an architect with a passion for digital fabrication, and Katherine is a self-taught graphic artist and fashion designer by training. They tell their story, blending complex geometry and traditional techniques to create wearable art that's as thought-provoking as it is beautiful. We'll talk about how their passion for art and architecture influences their approach to jewelry, transforming structural ideas into wearable pieces. Hi, Duane and Katherine. We're so glad to have you on the show with us. Welcome to Practice Disrupted.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so we ran through your formal bios. Is there anything, we like to kick it off with a little bit of an icebreaker. Is there anything that you all are looking forward to in the near future that we'd like to share?
I think several things. Most pressing is our newest collection that we're hoping to release by the end of this month. It might be released even by the time the podcast comes out. So we're calling it Ghost Gems. And I don't know how much we can say about it without giving too much away before it's out. But I guess expect the unexpected. It's the first instance of us integrating custom cut gems into our line. So we thought it was high time to add some color into our product range. And this is what we came up with.
Great. Duane, do you want to add to that?
No, absolutely. Basically, if you want to conceptualize it, it's the expect the unexpected is exactly the case. You can imagine the traditional notion of jewelry kind of deconstructed and reconstructed a little bit. And that's all I'll say.
Duane, at one point you compared this to like the culinary arts.
Oh yeah. Oh no. So yeah. So exactly that. So that's a good analogy. Is that there's if you imagine kind of gastronomic cuisine, kind of deconstructing the flavors and the ingredients and recomposing them in a novel way. That's kind of what we're doing with Ghost Gems. It uses all of the traditional pieces of jewelry in ways that maybe are a little bit unexpected
and avant-garde.
Yeah, definitely trying to go for something a little bit, Katherine, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a little bit avant-garde and also has a bit of a pop sensibility at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
One of the reasons why I'm so ecstatic to have both of you on is because I think a lot of what's been on Practice Disrupted previously has really been software innovation, let alone software applied to product. And you guys are definitely the first product innovators that we have. I guess product at this scale, I should say. We've had building product innovation, but product that is actually more B2C, right? Rather than B2B, which is what the building industry seems to be focused on. So I would love to hear about what led the two of you to create Xover0, and was there a particular moment or experience that sparked the brand's vision?
I think probably just like a long, slow burn of pent-up creative energy that we had nowhere to spend in our day jobs, where we were just constantly playing it safe and letting, that safety dictate the outcome of each and every project. So yeah, we just had a lot of ideas bouncing around in our heads that we wanted to pursue, and we needed an outlet for it. So it was kind of a slow and steady path towards the Xover0 jewelry line, but it just seems like it was always kind of like destined to happen.
And I think one of the things about that we don't talk about and nobody our age talks about, but is definitely present, is the fact that the crash happened at a really bad time for our careers. And so just at the point we would have been able to, get out of those first and second jobs and start doing really significant stuff, all of the resources just evaporated. And so there had to become a kind of take the opportunities you can and do it yourself kind of spirit across the entire, architecture and design industries at that time. And so we really came out of the kind of post-crash, the kind of the rebuild from the crash, looking for unique, novel opportunities, but knowing that this wasn't, the era where they were just giving out big projects and, you could just do whatever. So it was really kind of making your own opportunities. And I think Katherine and I have always both been kind of entrepreneurial, definitely creative, obviously, as designers, just always looking for an outlet, even if we were doing it in pretty normative ways in day jobs, looking for things that we could do to do things with more novelty.
And I think I was always quite certain about my goal to have my own business as a student, even before that, before starting at Parsons, I knew that was my goal. So it was kind of just like, now or never, take the leap.
And I know, Katherine, I would say that, you have a background in fashion, which I feel like the scale of that, just because you alluded to risk earlier, is a little bit different. Well, fashion has its own risk, admittedly, but just like the scale and capital of building or of delivering so many garments versus delivering a building is a very different model. So when you think about what you mentioned about risk, was the scale of what you're producing just more comfortable to you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much scale has to do with the conversation about like creative risk. There's like definitely financial risk and there's creative risk. But I think first and foremost, the scale was necessitated by the fact that we started this when we were living in LA. By standards of most of the country, a small apartment in LA. Maybe it was a castle. We were very grateful to have it. Great place. But, it was very, very hard to run a business and live out of that kind of space. So we, limited our scope to what we could actually fit inside of our apartment with us. And jewelry objects, as we all know, are very small. So it just seemed like a good fit and it worked.
Yeah, if we wanted dinner, we had to clear the product photography we were doing off I say dinner table, but it was really a kitchen table, and, cook dinner. And then if we wanted to get back to product photography, we'd have to do our washing up and then, reset up the product photography setup. So it was
and assembly, not just photography, shipping, yeah, all of the things.
And then my next question would be, if it weren't for the evolution of computational design and 3D printing, do you think you still would be pursuing jewelry and ornamentation?
Maybe not, actually. I think that the digital design and 3D printing really inspired us to start creating, because the sky is the limit with that, And I think it was fairly new at the time we got started with it. And there was a lot that we felt we could do. I mean, I don't know if this is a good way to think about it, but I think about it as like an acrobatic act or an acrobatic trick. And as unathletic people, this is me and Duane's version of that, right? Like we can see something that like we can create or build upon, a technique that we can pursue and really hone. And that's really what made us gravitate towards this. That was something that I think we always would have wanted to do, play with the materiality of things and the structure in a way that was very out of the box. But had these technologies not kind of like lined up with the timing of us being like chomping at the bit to do something like this, I don't know. I don't know that we would have been able to follow our dreams. Certainly not in the same way.
Yeah, and I can speak to the architectural side of that a specific driver of this for us was, in fact, that, I was a computational designer, and unless you had a large budget project or, a client who was willing to say, you know what, this thing that is really novel and at that time still pretty challenging, pretty avant-garde, they really had to support that. And as if you either had to go to a big firm that, and you had to kind of pick your opportunities, you'd see you'd be doing the front desk, reception desk in a skyscraper, right? And so that was kind of the scope of impact that you could anticipate, unless you were one of the super top end people that was doing a hotel facade in Dubai or something, right? That was what it was getting made at. And unless you were able to and wanted to work at that scale, it wasn't happening. It was going to be all virtual or paper, quote unquote, projects anyway. And that didn't do it for me in terms of trying to explore advanced fabrication. So that intersection of computational design and advanced fabrication, keeping our scale to the scale of the body, something Katherine knows the landscape, quote unquote, of the body very well as a fashion designer. And I knew the computational tools very well. And so that kind of intersection, I think, was a really happy place for us to, like Katherine says, kind of try to do something that's a feat of daring in a certain sense, but also trying to look at something that is both daring but also achievable, because you're trying to take these tools that are, we're not the first people to work with them or anything, but definitely pretty novel still, especially at that point, and get them to do real things and test them by making something real and putting it out in the world, not just being able to get by on making virtual projects that would never actually stand up, or having the economy of scale to be able to work on those super large projects. So it was really a kind of confluence. It was an intersection of a lot of different favorable conditions for us to be able to start Xover0.
So when you first started conceptualizing Xover0, what are some of the initial ideas or prototypes you worked on? And you alluded, Duane and Katherine, obviously to the technologies, but where did you guys start, and how did you see, or how have your products evolved to what we see today?
So when we first started just, pursuing this technology and seeing what we can do with it, that was just digital design, and anything that we made was made out of paper. We actually made a dress that was referred to as #cardware for a stationery and gift company that I worked for at the time. And that was scripted in Grasshopper, and we assembled that out of greeting cards, actually.
Fun.
Yeah.
And then we got the Ultimaker, the original Plus, and we got the kit, built the 3D printer, and ran it until the wheels fell off. Right, we got a feel for what the machines could do and what we wanted to see. And there's something I think that cuts to a little bit of what we do, in the same way that somebody who's trying to, we use the term acrobatics, trying to do something that's a bit of let's call it a high wire act, right? You've got to know how to, you got to know everything from the fundamentals up of every single bit of the process. And so building that Ultimaker kit allowed me to understand the kind of consequences of every single screw, in linear bearing and hot end and thermistor, what have you, in the way that in that case, the FFF or FDM process worked, to really get the fundamentals of additive manufacturing. In the same way I had broken, Grasshopper down into the atomic level almost. And I still use it to this day as a programming language, not just a language for scripting crazy geometry. And so that allowed us to push, once you get the fundamentals established, building complexity comes from layering up lots of really well understood fundamentals. And so that allowed us to move pretty fast. And pretty soon we, both ran the thing until it basically was just not reliable anymore. And then also got a level of scale and kind of ambition that we needed to have our stuff made from sturdier materials, and we decided to try to sell them, and went off in that direction.
Yeah. And we were working with production partners initially to do that. Again, small apartment, but yeah, we have since taken everything on in-house since moving to Mississippi. And that's where we are now. We've kind of upgraded our setup and restricted our line to precious metals.
So walk us through the design process today. So obviously, Duane, you talked about like the breakdown down to understanding even the tooling of the machines and grasshoppers.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd love to understand what your design process is today. And, Katherine, you and Duane both started talking about your new line. And so a little bit more about how that came together.
So I think the design process kind of evolved for us from just like asking the question, but can the machine do this? Like, let's see if it can do this. And then, getting the result and tweaking it and testing more and pushing boundaries. And then, once we got a lot of answered questions and a lot of products into our line, these days we're kind of like looking for kind of gaps or holes to fill in the product line itself. And then sometimes it's just like waking up with an idea in our head and really feeling like we absolutely have to make that. With Ghost Gems, we did a bunch of iterations and kind of culled that group, chose the best ones. We didn't feel like it was wise to make every single option. So we're just kind of like looking for the best grouping of products that look cohesive together while at the same time having enough variation to keep people excited and cover some options.
Yeah, I mean, we ideated even to the level of making, digital models, 20, 25 different patterns for the kind of one of the big pieces, one of the big parts of the Ghost Gem thing that you'll see. And I think that's something that, talking about the design process, we come at it from, interesting, divergent or convergent, I guess, really converging from different places, ways. Katherine is trained as a designer and as a fashion designer. The way she ideates is much different than the way I do. And I'll let her speak to that. But I can say once we get something into a platform, like in our case, Grasshopper is really useful, not just because, like I kind of hinted at earlier, it's a machine for making crazy geometries, but because it allows us to build a machine that is flexible and that we've built from first principles and can control the variables in, right? And so we can sit down together and look at the kind of the space of all of the design possibilities, or the design space, as it were, and both make big changes, change whole patterns, change whole scales and things like that, and watch a large change propagate, but then also get down to the real technical details of something that's going to be able to be successful as a model, as a piece of jewelry, as something that we know we can cast, et cetera. We know will be a successful print, what have you.
And Grasshopper is always integral to our process, but sometimes the design just starts as a simple sketch in pencil on paper. Sometimes we make a physical model, we find some clay or something and make something up for the other to see. And sometimes it's just like kind of an amorphous 3D sculpture in a program like ZBrush, just to spatially work out the configuration of the idea. But I like that it just kind of like, it depends on what side we wake up we get out of the bed in the morning. It depends on what side we get out of the bed in the morning. It's just like, it can vary. And I think that variation brings some personality into our line rather than it just looking like a Grasshopper design each and every time. And I think when it comes to having Grasshopper help us hone one of those ideas that started that way, that is more of a challenge to do in Grasshopper helps integrate like some more complexity and flavor.
Yeah, and to speak to that, not to belabor the point, but it's at 25 years having done this, in the design practices, kind of, we've learned so many tools that we have these toolboxes, in our minds, and literally, where we go and we pick out the right tool for the job. And I did mention Grasshopper a couple times, and tools like that are good for a certain mode of production. But we've been at this for so long that that we don't privilege the tool over the idea. And sometimes we let the tool generate the idea, or know that the affordances of a tool can do interesting things in certain ways for us, but we pick where necessary the tool for the job.
So I have a question. There's a lot of different jewelry companies out of there. Are you scanning the market when you go to create a new line and understanding what's coming up next? And how much of it is kind of just really intuition and producing something that you are really just passionate about for yourselves and then sharing your designs with the world?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a mix of all of the above. There are some times when we have an idea that's so out of left field that we're pretty sure no one else has done it before. And I think that we are a little bit tapped in just by kind of what we take in on a daily basis. But yeah, we do research. It really kind of depends on the product. For the Geoheart pendant, the heart-shaped pendant that's in Uglies that Joey King wears in that movie, that was something that we did a bunch of research before we created that. We wanted to make something that fit in our line, but was a referential heart-shaped object to have something for Valentine's Day to sell. And so we did a bunch of research for that. We didn't see anything like it. And that's what we came up with. There were some geometric hearts that were just kind of like basic wireframes, but something that has like a defined style to it. Yeah, we definitely made sure that was unique.
Yeah, it's funny. It's really happenstance in some ways. I think we generally prefer, obviously there's places on your body that you wear different things. And so there's a direct relationship between the piece and the body. And so, there's things you can't innovate. There's just ways of putting things on the body that just aren't going to work.
And there's definitely limitations of like weight and
right.
size. And
exactly.
Yeah.
But like beyond that, we would rather do a type of jewelry that nobody's ever seen before generally. But the Geoheart, something that just completely defies expectations. And that's really, our stuff has always come into more standard. It's always been how far can we push it? And then how far back do we need to come to make it something that's actually fabricatable and saleable and shippable. But the Geoheart is interesting because it came from the absolute opposite direction, which the heart-shaped pendant is the most overdone piece of jewelry in the world, right? If you
absolutely
look at it online, there is no end to the different kind of iterations on the same thing. And it's really interesting because there's nothing out there like it. I mean, like ours. And I think that's one of the lucky things about
doing something different.
Yeah, is that we found, rather than try to find the
track
kind of
a trend,
or find
rather
the blue,
than try to
or rather than try to find the blue waters where nobody else is fishing that we normally do. We went into the red chummy waters where everybody's trying to sell in the same market and said, well, heck, there's something that this most overdone thing. There's a way of doing it that nobody's done. And so we're really happy and lucky with that one, I think.
Duane, I appreciate kind of your reference to blue water and red water and blue ocean strategy from a business standpoint is one of my favorite books. But, Katherine, you first mentioned it. So one of your pieces is being featured in the Uglies on the primary character, Joey King. So how did that come about, actually?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. It's a movie. It's called Uglies, and it is based on a New York Times bestselling book by the same title. The author is Scott Westerfeld, and it's part of a series. So it's like a very beloved YA series of books that people who read it when it was released in 2005 are absolutely crazy about it. It has a very special place in a lot of people's hearts. And the pendant shows up a whole bunch of times in the book. It really plays a major role in the book, so they definitely needed to find one for the shoot. And I'd like to say that I am a product placement guru genius, and you can just make out the check for the big bucks and send it straight to me if you'd like to employ me to do the same for you. But actually, it was like totally organic because the design was so unique. It was just a really great fit for what the story called for. So the costume designer, Chris Araujo, I'm totally butchering her name, Araujo, she found us through our website and contacted us, and we were just immediately interested and intrigued. And Chris has such an amazing resume that we knew our design would be in good hands when we sent it to the fitting. And we're told that Joey King loved the design. We were just so like, oh my God, like that was just a really proud moment for us because, not only is Chris super talented and, I think she worked on the Hunger Games and just loads of stuff, but Joey King is not just an amazing actor, but is like so good at fashion. Like it's crazy how good at fashion she is. Like the looks that she and Jared Ng are serving on a daily basis are just like amazing eye candy. So we were incredibly flattered. And yeah, I just think that if anyone has read the series and is familiar with that universe, and if anyone has also looked at our line, that they would really understand why it's such a good fit. Duane, do you want to talk a little bit about Scott Westerfeld and how he uses architecture?
So I think it's interesting because Scott Westerfeld, he's really architecturally informed and sensitive, and he uses distinct kind of architectural styles and references to differentiate between the different like kind of sects and settings in society, right? So it's really kind of richly conceptualized the way that he implements that. So our pendant, for example, the Geoheart pendant was inspired by Art Deco architecture. And like Katherine said, we designed it for Valentine's Day a few years ago. And like we were talking about at the time, there wasn't really much in the way of a kind of a more, this geometric style, this kind of the non-traditional heart-shaped pendant. So we thought it was an appropriate creative challenge, and that's what we came up with. And like Katherine said, when they reached out, we were really excited. But I think one thing that's really neat to see, looping back to the architecture and Scott Westerfeld thing, is that, when McGee and his whole production company kind of reimagined or, put this to visual, that you could tell that they were cooking on the same, from the same cookbook. And I know that Mr. Westerfeld was a consultant on the production. And so I'm sure that he made sure that people understood in the production understood how the world building comes. Yeah. The universe, the world building comes from an architectural perspective, how, the various places have the various architectural flavors they have. And you can see it. You can even see it in the trailer, if you look at that.
And I don't know if this is too much of a spoiler, but you can see like the objects on Dr. Cable's desk have like a very like geometric sci-fi feel. And I guess the spoiler is that the origin of Tally's heart pendant comes from Dr. Cable.
Yeah, do not accept a heart pendant given to you by Dr. Cable. It may look like our Geoheart, but beware.
X over 0. It has some other features.
X over 0, accept only the original, accept no substitutions, because don't get it from Dr. Cable. Watch out. Just watch out.
Were you aware of the books before you were contacted?
So no, the books actually came out in 2005, which is right when we were starting our professional lives. And it's a young adult series. It's a YA series of books. So we didn't know about them. We just kind of like missed that by a slim margin. And when we were contacted about it, we said yes. And then we're like, what are we getting
Maybe
into?
We should go read the book.
Yeah. So yeah, we did read the books after that. And like with every page turn, I was just kind of like, hell yeah, this is so cool.
Yeah. And it really, the way that Scott Westerfeld wrote it, I mean, it really begs for a movie interpretation. It's really well kind of put together to be, to let the imagination kind of run with how that stuff can be. So you put it in the hands of somebody that's technically a good filmmaker and has a strong vision for the production, for the, set work and all of that stuff. And it can be really cool. So.
And I think if anyone is like super familiar with the YA genre, you'll see like a lot of pretty familiar themes in this book, but this book came first. So it's nice to see the author finally getting his due.
Yeah, exactly. He's definitely the guy that kind of kicked off the whole thing. Maybe the first of the current, the crop since that time of the YA dystopians. And oddly enough, it turns out friends of a friend, which we had no clue about. So that's just kind of a funny.
Yeah, that's true. We have a friend in common with the author, or Duane's friend is in common with the author.
Did you guys know, I mean, when you saw the email come through or the direct message on Insta from Chris, what was your initial reaction?
She just emailed us through the contact form on our store.
Oh, really?
And yeah. And we didn't think it was a scam because we'd been contacted by production companies before. We've sent stuff to Cirque du Soleil. We had several orders from the show, The Orville. So we just were kind of like, oh God, it's the pandemic. I really hope this works out and that it's not something like, we can't, like the shipping just like went off the rails or something.
Oh, great. I'm so glad. I mean, I think it's just kind of exciting to hear that was out of nowhere. So thank goodness for the internet. So speaking of website and I think that goes to the heart of things that I love, all business operations and marketing. How do you guys balance the creative and business sides of running Xover0?
Oh, not well. Not well. Speaking of website, if you want to get into that, I mean, like we are still on our Shopify 1.0 theme because it was a lot of custom coding. The thing about running a small business is that sometimes you just have to do things yourself. So I am the web designer and I have a 2.0 shop that is ready to go, ready to make live at any minute, barring one JavaScript issue that I'm banging my head against the wall. But that should have been up like weeks ago. And I would love to get it up soon, but there's just so much stuff coming at me right now from all directions with the movie release and the pendant and everything.
So obviously you're launching a new collection. Do you guys have a long-term vision for Xover0?
I would like to have a new collection twice a year. They don't have to be huge collections, but just a few pieces that work together. And we have them in the tank. Like it's just a matter of having the time and having everything come together for us that we are able to put one foot in front of another. But we've got lots of works in progress. So we expect that people will be able to start seeing a lot more from us a lot more frequently. The pandemic kind of put us in a little bit of a holding pattern with that. But I think now we are back and fully operational and ready to roll.
And I can add to that from a kind of idea business side, just the whole kind of package. I think that you'll see as we develop and as we, if we, like Katherine said, we really got put on our back foot by the pandemic. But, as the world is coming out of that and as we're able to shift over toward, doing more of this, that we want to have the kind of overall collection, right? Capital C collection that kind of acts as a body of work that maybe is not so disparate and diverse where every single piece is a one-off or so predictable that you see any given piece and you're like, oh, that's an Xover0 immediately, right? But that we kind of fluidly go between things that are inspired by traditions of fashion and jewelry and things that are inspired by my weird math obsessions and, coding projects and things that really just fluidly go and things that are inspired by different architectural styles and different references in the world. I think, it's not somebody like that we're going to say is necessarily we're trying to pattern ourselves after in any stretch of the imagination. But Katherine, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the fashion person.
I don't know. I'm holding my breath. I'm worried that you're wrong.
Well, yeah, it's fine. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I think to kind of template it out, if you were to think about somebody like Alexander McQueen, who
I don't know about that, Duane.
I just mean the diverse. Don't look at any of the work itself. I just mean the diversity of the themes of some of the things and how, some things really played with the technology and other things played with these, age-old references and, played with the genre itself. I think somebody who's really playing the whole field of this discipline for us is the thing. So that maybe there's a recognizable set of values more than a recognizable style or a recognizable technique. We don't just want one button that we just keep mashing.
In terms of the future, I think maybe what you can expect from us is more color in the line with gemstones. We're using lab-grown gems primarily. And I think a lot more kind of tongue-in-cheek personality, pop art kind of a vibe. We're kind of gradually peppering that in as well. It's just kind of like unavoidable in our individual personalities and in our conversations with each other. So we're not going to hide that from our products either.
And I think the other thing, just to make a plug, talking about working with Uglies and talking about the future, is we would die if something of ours, if we were able to work on the TV show Foundation. So David S. Goyer and Dagmar Palmak-Bayova, call us, because we are such huge fans. From the opening credits of the first episode of that show, design wise, we were like, this is our jam. So it has nothing to those worlds. I mean,
we
so
love the
many
vaults. We love the ghost.
Yeah.
And
ghost gems don't come from that ghost, but
that is true though.
But I can definitely see the references. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, there's the long-term scale of what we want to do as a company and as a brand, et cetera. But then there's also just David S. Goyer, call us.
Yeah, we've got a lot of offerings for you to choose from, or we could whip something up for you.
Yeah, exactly. Shameless plug.
Yeah. And then just, we're looking forward to more kind of like out of the box opportunities. I think Duane was approached by someone in who builds custom cars. Yeah.
To do some custom 3D printed kit and finish kind of stuff for specifically one private customer.
Yeah, it sounded like there was one project in mind, but then that kind of died. So we're just waiting for the next one to come along. And then, we've been contacted by someone who wanted a mask for an opera. But that's what we're here for. So
I love your enthusiasm. And I wish I could say Practice Disrupted had the right reach to get you to the right people to get on.
We're just putting it out into the universe.
We're just putting it out into the universe. Just needs to go into the ether.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give to young designers who are interested in going into the field of product design?
I don't know. Maybe don't follow advice or do. I don't know. It's it's all kind of random. I know that I followed the advice of my professors when they said work for a small, if your goal is to have a small business, work for a small business. That's what I pursued. And I think there are definitely some pros and cons to that. I don't know that was super helpful in us having a business. Maybe it was. Maybe it kept us from kind of getting stuck in a rut and just being a button pusher in something that was over-specialized. But maybe not. Maybe if I had been over-specialized, I would have made more money and just paid someone to take some of the hats off my plate. My tombstone is going to read crushed by hats if things keep going the way that they're going. But I don't know. Duane, what advice do you have?
So specifically for architects, having, worked in the profession, full time for 14 years or something. There's a lot of opportunities. Take them where you can. I always worked for small to mid-sized firms, and we kind of got a very good professional education in my undergraduate and a very, very, very sober professional kind of pro practice kind of education. And a lot of that was, look, what do you want to do with the long-term arc of your career? And what kind of firms do you want to work for? And I, and even fresh out of school, saw this play out where folks that went to work for the big firms, the people that taught us pro practice, warned, oh, you're going to get stuck doing bathroom partition details and stuff like that. And, they were dealing with that kind of thing. And I went to work for, I didn't go aboard these kind of battleship firms. I went to the pirate ship firms. And I think there's a kind of swashbuckling spirit where everybody has to be able to do everything that embodied, that was really attractive to me. And I've always been a pirate ship person more than a battleship person. And I think find yourself in that, understand what you want to get out of your early career, get your license early as an architect, but also leave yourself open to stuff like this.
Yeah, we just both answered the question in like what to do for your day job, because that's what we had to do. We had to have day jobs, but so we're just kind of making assumptions that that's everyone's lot in life. But I would say even if you do have a day job, always do something on the side for yourself. Make time for it, keep the creative spark alive however you can, and build on that and try to just proportionally do more of it every day you can.
Yeah, figure out how to make your job not get your job, right? How do you do what you want in the end? And I think that comes from, I can tell you what it doesn't come from. It doesn't come, as much as I love architects, obviously being one, doesn't come from just hanging out with other architects. You don't just sit around and talk shop, as good as that is and as fun as that is. Your commissions as an architect or your clients as a jewelry fabricator come from your social connections, right? So if you're in a city where you don't know those people, or if you're not from a socioeconomic background where you grew up around those people, figure out how to get in those circles and figure out how to speak that language.
Yeah, hit the club and go into debt doing it. That's what right. I would say. Like every celebrity memoir or success story that I've ever read involves like someone going into debt by going to the club every night. So yeah. I think that is as good of a piece of advice or good a strategy as any.
Yeah, there's wasting your time and wasting your money, then there's opportunity risk. And I think that, or what's it called? Opportunity cost. And I think that you need to balance the two. There's obviously being able to do a good job at things. Know your tools also. I think this the absolute number one biggest thing is know your tools, right? So that allows you to do more, cooler, faster. And so
know your nightclubs.
Exactly. So if you're in that, well, part of knowing your tools means being able to say to others to be conversant in the way that your tools work and what in kind of fine-grained detail you do and what you can do for them, rather than just sound like a BS artist who's like, oh yeah, I'll make you the most beautiful thing ever. Like, they're not, that whole thing is, what it's, the whole kind of Starchitect kind of vibe is not it anymore. You can't just get stuck being a technician, but you have to be able to express your technical excellence. And that's part of how you can show value, I think. And so it is half hitting the club and being very serious about about what you do. So I guess it's work hard, play hard kind of thing, and enjoy yourself. Do stuff you love. I mean, like we're really doing a lot of different things now, but I think a lot of this came from, we really wanted to know about 3D printing, not because we thought, oh, there's a great growth market, which it is, or computational design, blah, 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 right? It's because we wanted to know new ways to make cool stuff. And we really needed to feed those parts of ourselves. So know what you want, know what you love, and know what's going to make it worth having, doing and having fun doing. Just try to have fun.
If you haven't already seen Uglies by the time this is released, go watch it on Netflix. If you're wondering, or people are asking you, where did they get that cool heart pendant that Joey King is wearing? Tell them to find it at Xover0.com. A capital X, a lowercase O, VER, so the word over, and then the number 0 on your number key. And that's .com and at Instagram.
Hi, Disruptors. Thank you for joining us today on an episode of Practice Disrupted. If you like the content for today's show, you can find all of our past episodes over on practiceofarchitecture.com/podcast. Be a part of the conversation by joining me, our speakers, and other disruptors in our community at practiceofarchitecture.com/community. Our social media handle is Practice of Arch. That's Practice of ARCH. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to drop us a DM and say hello. Tune in next week for a new conversation on change in the profession.